if you're comfortable sharing it, what's the call that still keeps you up at night or wakes you up at night, or, can you talk about that?
Yeah. I've been in therapy for, I think, almost 2 years going over this stuff. And I've always been an open book. So I talk through it enough, I think, to where discussing it's not going to cripple me for the night by any means. But I had a string of pediatric calls when I was working in Minneapolis that I don't remember if it was all within one shift or if it was a span of like a couple shifts in a row. But it was after my son was born. So I used to be able to dehumanize people while I'm working on them. So I was focused on the treatment and like what I need to do. And after my son was born, like I couldn't do that with kids anymore. And I had one call where this lady wasn't paying attention. She had her kids in the back of the van. I think she was like texting or something like that, drove straight into the cement pillar of one of the bridges going over the road. And she didn't have, I think he was like a 3 or 4-year-old, didn't seatbelt him in his car seat. So when she hit that cement pillar, he launched forward, it collapsed his skull, and he was freaking out. And when I walked up, the mom could not be concerned with the fact that her son was jacked up.
Wait, so the son, he was still conscious?
Yeah, he was awake, but like his head was dented in. Mm-hmm. It was very obvious. And I'll never forget it because I walked up to the scene and fire had beat us there. And I was walking around. I saw one older kid. He was holding his arm. It looked like it was broken. So because of the description that came in, I already asked for a second truck to show up. So we had 2 crews on scene. So I asked the firefighters right away which one's the worst, and this firefighter was holding this kid that was screaming, and usually a screaming kid is a healthy kid. It's the quiet ones that you should be worried about immediately. And he was like facing away from me, so when he turned towards me, I saw the other side of the kid's head and just this like dent. Mm-hmm. It was like almost his whole upper part of his skull was collapsed in. And I was like, oh shit, like, let's go. I grabbed that kid, and I couldn't figure out why his freak out was just, it sounded different. It was like the pitch of his crying and stuff. It was just really weird. So I couldn't tell if it was his brain herniating or what, but I later found out with a patient follow-up, he was autistic on top of it. So it was a cultural thing. It was a family from, I think it was Somalia. And from what I was told at the hospital, the mom didn't really care so much because their son was defective, I guess, basically. And so I had that call, and that was pretty mind-numbing because you can do everything you want, but when the brain is going to herniate, like, you can't fix that unless they're in surgery. So that one was pretty rough because you could, I think I could only get like a small IV on his arm because he was freaking out, thrashing around and stuff.
How old do you think?
I think he was like 3 or 4.
So like a toddler.
Very young toddler type. And you always want to try to keep them calm, especially if they have a neck injury or spine injury, wherever throughout there. And we couldn't figure out how fast the car was going or anything. So that was pretty... It just makes you panic when you can't do anything. And then either the same shift or the next night, I can't remember, I was dispatched to a call for a baby that was vomiting blood. And most of the time that it's a sick kid, the parents gave him Tylenol and they throw up the Tylenol. It looks red. And I walked in and the parents were standing in this living room and they were holding their baby all swaddled up and stuff. And as soon as I saw the baby's face, it was just white. And it was the wrong kind of white. Just that opaque white color that the skin should not be. And immediately I was like, oh God, that gets your heart rate going pretty fast. And you want to do something for the kid, but you can't do anything if they're on hospice. And I found out that kid wasn't even a year old, just a tiny little baby. And it was when the baby was born, it was put on a hospice immediately because it had some sort of deformity within the heart and lung area where they couldn't fix it. So basically they sent the baby home with the parents to just live out whatever time the baby had. And the baby had lived a couple months longer than expected, but that was the night that the baby was going down. And so at one point I saw a little bit of blood start to trickle out when the baby coughed a couple times. And the thing that messed me up the most was how at peace the parents were and how not at peace I was with it. It's kids that you always want to do everything for. An adult that gets killed, whether it's a car accident or cardiac arrest or something, I can handle that so much better. But when it's a baby that hasn't gotten to live a full life, that hit me pretty hard. And I don't, it was just the fact, like, I've been on so many calls where it's just Tylenol that was thrown up. So when you get the real deal, it just hits you in the face like a sledgehammer, and then driving the kid to the hospital. I broke the rules of our ambulance policies. You're supposed to put the kid in a car seat and stuff. And I just refused to do that. I just seatbelted the mom on the stretcher and let her hold him on the way, or her, I think, on the way into the hospital. And we handed him off, and that was it. I wasn't allowed to touch the baby at all. I was just hoping to God she didn't die in the ambulance, because then we'd have to park and wait for the medical examiner to come. And that one was pretty rough. And there was one other, I'm trying to think of what it was. There was a third pediatric call. It was, I think it was the one, the baby had somehow gotten into her mom's methadone, because she was on narcotic treatment. So they get dosings of methadone from these clinics, and the baby had overdosed on that and wasn't breathing or anything. So we had to reverse an overdose on the baby. And we did do that, and we got her breathing and stuff. It was just so screwed up of, like, you're supposed to keep that away from a baby. This kid wasn't even hardly crawling at the time, so it was obviously very easy for the baby to get to it, and it's hard not to judge the parent immediately of, like, what the hell were you thinking, kind of thing. And there was a string of those, and then it wasn't too far distance from there was a 13-year-old girl that was shot in a drive-by. She was just outside doing a barbecue with her family. And when the police said it was like a gang rivalry thing, and they went by and did a drive-by on this house aiming for one guy at the barbecue. But one of the rounds caught the little girl in her humerus, or humeral bone, and it entered into her bicep, ricocheted up into her chest.
Oh, wow.
And so I could see the wound channel all the way up and in. And that's the point where, if there's no exit wound, you don't know where the bullet went. So you don't know what it all hit. And it was very minimal blood. It was just one of those gunshot wounds where it enters and kind of cauterizes right away. And she was terrified of me when I first showed up. But I got to walk away from that one feeling better about myself anyways, because I earned her trust, and she got comfortable and let me do the IV. For major trauma, I always put a bigger IV in case they need blood or like mass volume of some sort, fluids or blood. And it was just the combination of those calls within a short time frame that those really jacked me up for a long time. That was at the point where I was pretty numb inside. What
time period did that's 4 calls? What time period did that happen in?
That was with I would guesstimate within like a 2-week time frame.
Wow. And
the first 2 kid calls was within the same shift, if I remember right.
Wow.
So that it was pretty bad. And my partner that was with me on those said that she didn't want to work with me anymore because I attract bad calls.
Well, how far into your career were you at that point? Was this year 1 or year 2?
No, that was 2 or 3 years in.
Yeah. You mentioned the kind of the parents' reaction to each of those. I kind of wonder, what do you being a paramedic and doing all these calls, what do you learn about the human condition, like what humans are? Because you're seeing them in their most extreme, again, worst days, things like that, and specifically parents with their kids. Like, what have you come away with any sort of, I guess, wisdom around like deeper truths that make us human?
I think the biggest one is just we're all flawed. We all like to think we know what we're doing, but when these emergencies happen, you see people's true colors. Some people handle it better, other people don't. And it's because you have so much emotion, especially a parent towards their kid that's hurt. It can freak parents out pretty fast. So some of them are receptive and others aren't. And I haven't quite figured out why. It's just like that some people seem to handle it better. And I don't know if that's because they have faith in us when we show up, or have a higher faith where they know it's going to be okay because of whatever their religious belief is. That'd be a part of it. But also, you see a lot of good. The most unsuspecting gangbanger looking dude will call 911 for an old lady that fell on the sidewalk and sit there and help her while she's waiting for the ambulance because she broke a hip or something. So the biggest thing I walk away from is that, like, people have good in them, even if their outside, kind of presentation wouldn't strike you as being a good person. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it feels kind of like the classic "don't judge a book by its cover."
Yeah.
Sometimes the cover's accurate, sometimes it's not.
People are surprising.
Yeah.
I think that's like the biggest thing that I can wrap my head around is like, you just never know what you're going to get. So don't be quick to judge. And it is what it is. You just got to be ready for whatever reaction you're going to get. And I don't know if there's any like profound wisdom that I've walked away from any one call thinking, I figured out life's mysteries or anything, but it's still kind of a big question in my head on that.